So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story. Take a moment to get yourself comfortable and allow your eyes to close. And with your eyes closed, you can hear the sound of my voice in the background. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, I'm just going to tell a story. And I don't know whether you'll drift deeper asleep to the sound of my voice, or perhaps the spaces between my words. And as you drift asleep, you can just imagine yourself walking along a cliff top. And as you walk along that cliff top, you can gaze out to sea. And as you gaze out to sea, you can notice way off in the distance is the tail end of a passing storm. You can see the way the rain is falling into the sea, way over on the horizon. See the occasional silent flashes of lightning in the clouds, as those clouds continue to drift further and further away over the horizon. And you can notice what that sea looks like from up here on the cliff. Perhaps noticing the white water on the tops of the waves as they roll in towards the shore. Maybe even hearing the waves down on the shore below. And noticing some seabirds, perhaps noisily flying in the sky, having their first flight after the storm. And as you walk along that cliff top, you can head towards the lighthouse. And when you reach the lighthouse, you can notice the way that light beams out to sea, swings around the sea, and then pushes out again, circling around and around. And you can walk up to the door of the lighthouse, hear the sound of that door as you open it, and walk inside. And you can notice what the furniture is like in here. There's always that curiosity of how someone will place the furniture in a lighthouse with curved walls. And notice the thickness of those walls, of the windowsills, how deeply set in those windows are. And you can see that there's a hatch leading down under the lighthouse. And you can be curious about what's down there. But for now, decide to ascend, decide to follow that spiral staircase all the way up to the top of the lighthouse, walking around that spiral staircase, going higher and higher up that lighthouse. And at the top of the lighthouse is a hatch that leads up to the light. You can open that hatch and climb up into the room with the light. And walk over to the window and stand looking out to sea, aware of how high up you are up here. And as that light continues to turn, you feel the warmth of that light on the back of your neck as it passes by you, and you see your shadow stretched across the sea. And from up here, you can see that storm going off in the distance. And then you notice, way off on the horizon, almost like a light flashing back, and you don't know whether it's a boat or whether from this height you're able to see the shore of some land a long way away. And you climb back down from this light, go down the staircase, and when you're back on the ground floor, you decide to open that hatch and see what's under this lighthouse. And you know you're up high on a cliff, and so you wonder whether this hatch leads down into the cliff. And you open the hatch, and you see a shaft beneath that hatch, and a ladder. And you follow that ladder down deeper under the lighthouse. And you feel like you're descending for such a long time. So long that you start getting curious about when you're going to reach the bottom. And the whole time you're descending, the light above you gets further and further away, and everything around you gets darker and darker. And eventually you start to hear the distant echoey sound of the occasional drop in what sounds like an echoey cave. And then you finally reach the ground. And you see next to you on the ground, with the light on a mobile phone, there are some matches and some candles, and so you make a torch with those candles. You light a candle, and you notice the way the flickering flame of a candle dances its light on the walls, shadows moving, the smell of that candle flame. You notice there seems to be a bit of a breeze down here from somewhere, the way that flame dances in your hand. And as you walk down this corridor, you notice it looks like it's been hand cut, like someone's just been down here with a pickaxe, hacking away creating this space. And you see at regular intervals what looks like lights on the walls to be lit by the flame from the candle. And as you light each one with the flame, so a little bit more area glows to life. And you start to see more and more of this space. And you're curious how deep you are, whether you descended beyond the depth of the cliff, or whether you're just within the cliff. And you wonder why someone dug this space out. And as you continue exploring, so the sounds of dripping water increases, and then you start hearing just a distant, faint rumble. And you continue walking through the cavern, walking down different corridors, different tunnels, exploring other caverns, lighting the lights as you go. And that rumbling sound increases. And eventually you find yourself in a vast cavern that seems to have a river flowing through it. It seems to be quite a wide river that's just creating a low rumble as water from a waterfall pours in at one end. And as the river's wide, so the river's reasonably slow moving. And you see, tied to the shore is a rowboat. And you decide to explore. You've come this far, so you decide to get into that rowboat and explore. So you untie it from the shore, use an oar to push off from the side. You hear that sloshing around the boat. You climb into the boat, feel the rocking as you get in, get settled in that boat, pushing away from the shore. Then using the oars to direct yourself and to gently push yourself along the river. And you don't have to do much pushing. It's more just steering, keep yourself on track. And you still have that candle, which you've rested down in a gap that seemed to be designed specifically to hold a candle at the front of the boat. And as you head out of the cavern, following that river, so the ceiling of this cavern seems lower, and you enter what seems like a channel created just by the flow of this water. And the water speeds up slightly. You can see the way the light flickers around the walls, on the ceiling, And occasionally that water sprays up a little bit, splashing on the boat, splashing against the walls. And you notice it has a salty smell. And you realize that this river must be seawater that's flowed in here somehow. And then all of a sudden, that water begins to speed up. And the boat begins to speed up. And you feel yourself pushed back slightly in that rowboat with the acceleration. And then it feels almost like you're on a water ride. Suddenly it becomes more steep, and you feel like you're dropping down, following that water, as it seems to go steeply down, before after quite a while starting to straighten out more again. It seems to have a few turns, a few twists, and use the oars to reduce the amount you knock into the sides, before ending up in another larger space with calmer water again. And you try and look around you, see where you are, and you can't really see much, just that faint glow on the cave walls. And you notice that you're gradually drifting towards another tunnel. And this one turns out to be steeper than the last. And you feel perfectly fine, perfectly safe, but you feel like you should just hang on a little bit and go with the flow. And the next time it comes out to another underground lake, you notice something different about this area. That it's much colder than where you left. And you notice the boat seems to be moving through the water, almost as if that water has become a little bit more syrup-like, a little bit thicker. And you put your hands into the water, and you feel how cold that water is. And now the breeze down here has increased significantly to what it was like when you entered this area, when you came underground. And you pull the boat over to the side. You tie the boat to a rock. You climb out of that boat, and you see a tunnel to follow. And you walk down that tunnel. And although this has felt like a long ride, you're curious how far you've come for it to be so cold, and where you've ended up. And you start to hear a howling wind sound. And you find your way down a cave, and you see a light at the end of the tunnel. And you head towards that light. And you notice, as you start getting closer to that light, that everything outside that light is white. And the closer that you get, the more you realise that it's snow. And you find yourself coming out in a snowy environment. And you can see a little way in the distance. There's a log cabin. And it doesn't look like there's any lights on in the log cabin. Doesn't look like there's anybody there. But you decide you want to get yourself warm and try and figure out where you are. And so you push through that snow towards the log cabin, pushing your feet through the snow, crunching on snow, walking through higher bits of powdery snow, having to push through some trees and the branches and the snow falling off those branches, and that cold wind on your cheeks. And eventually you reach that cabin. You open the door, enter the cabin, close that door behind you, and notice the sudden drop in sound of that wind. And the first thing you do is find a way to warm yourself up. You see that there's some wood and there's a log fire. And you put wood in the fireplace. You start yourself a fire. You then go through to the bedroom. You notice there's loads of incredibly fluffy blankets. The softest blankets you could find. And you wrap a couple of blankets around you, almost like those blankets are giving you a hug, and you feel that warmth. And before doing anything else, you go and sit in a chair, an incredibly comfortable chair, by that log fire. And you relax in that chair wrapped in blankets. And you just calm down your breathing and relax. And just watch the fire. Watch the way the flames dance in the fireplace. Hear that crackling. Feeling the warmth of that fire on your cheeks. The warmth of the fire warming your legs. And your feet and your hands. And feeling more comfortable as you relax in front of that fire. And after you've warmed up, you decide to take a moment to see if there's anything to eat. And you find a tin of carrots. You find a bag of marshmallows. But you don't find much else here. And so you open the tin of carrots. You cook the carrots and you just eat them as they are. But the thing you're looking forward to is the marshmallows. And you go back to your seat. And you have a poker. Then you just sit next to the fire, and while you relax, you take marshmallows one at a time, heating it up, and then eating it, and relaxing, then heating another one up, and then eating it. Almost drifting into your own little world in your mind, while you just heat marshmallows and eat them, until you decide that perhaps you should be more productive. This is, after all, a strange experience, because you don't know where you are and how a simple tunnel could transport you here. And so you start searching the cabin to try and figure out where you are. And you can't find any immediate clues. And so you look out the windows, see if outside there are any clues. And then you notice that there's a polar bear and a polar bear cub just walking through the woods, through the trees, and heading out into the snow. And you think that's a curious sight, given that a little while ago you were stood in a lighthouse on a cliff. And you wonder whether that's a clue as to where you are. And the sky is blue. It's quite windy, but the sky is blue. And you notice the sun's beginning to set. And so you think when you see the stars, perhaps you'll recognize where you are. And as the sun begins to set, and you wait for that sun to set, you find yourself waiting and waiting. And the longer you wait, the more that sun seems to be rising again. And you notice that for some reason here, the sun isn't setting. It's reaching a sunset, but then it's turning into a sunrise. And you decide that you're going to get a good night's sleep. And you can go and explore in the morning. And so you take all those blankets to the bedroom. You make yourself the coziest, most comfortable bed you can. You wrap yourself up in that bed and close your eyes and drift and float comfortably asleep. And while you sleep, you begin to dream. And it doesn't surprise you that your dreams are a little unusual, given that your experience is a little unusual. Find yourself walking through a forest. And you notice there's something unusual about the plants here. They have these enormous leaves. And you watch as a squirrel climbs a tree. You watch the way it leaps from one tree to another. and then scampers its way around the trunk of a tree, pausing partway round, its legs stretched out, and then scampering around some more, high up into the tree. And as you watch that squirrel, so you hear thuds in the background. You can feel the ground shaking beneath your feet with each thud. You wonder whether there's a pile driver somewhere, perhaps trying to drive something into a deep hole. You decide to explore to find out. And when you go to explore, suddenly you see what looks like a tree trunk lift off the ground, move forward, and then thud back down again, followed by what looks like another tree trunk and another and another. And then you notice even more. And you follow those tree trunks up with your eyes, and you realize that they're the legs of an enormous dinosaur. And you look out towards the heads of the dinosaur, and you see that they seem to be sweeping their heads from side to side, clearing the area around them of vegetation in arcs around their heads. They seem to have their necks stretched out, and they eat some food, and then they move their head along slightly, they eat some more food. And they do that until they've moved their head all the way from one side across to the other. And then they take a step so they can reach some more vegetation, and they do the same again. And you perhaps think to yourself that you thought that these dinosaurs with these long necks would be reaching up high into canopies of trees, eating the leaves from high up in trees, imagining it would be a bit like watching giraffe eating. But instead they seem to be sweeping their heads from side to side, just slowly eating what's in front of their head, then eating a bit further along, a bit further along. And this was behaviour you weren't expecting to see. And you wonder if there are these dinosaurs, what else is perhaps here? And you also wonder whether these dinosaurs would notice if you climbed up on their back. You felt that might help you to get a better view of things. And so you walk to the back end of one of the dinosaurs. You climb up on its tail while it's feeding, and you follow its tail up to its back, and it doesn't seem to notice you at all. You suspect that perhaps it doesn't have a lot of feeling for subtleties like a small creature like you climbing on it. And you look around, and you realize that this is some kind of prehistoric land, and that it looks totally different. to the kind of land you're used to, yet it has a certain familiarity. And you see off in the distance something twinkle or shine like a light in the distance. And you decide that's the place to go and explore. That will perhaps give you answers about this dream. And you're aware that this dream feels so lucid and so real. You're so aware that you're actually fast asleep in a cabin. And so you climb down from the dinosaur. You dodge around and between the dinosaurs as you run out of this area in the direction of that light. And you push on through different vegetation, hearing different sounds of unfamiliar animals. Eventually, hearing an electrical buzzing sound, and then seeing what looks like a blue portal, almost like it's got lightning or electricity buzzing around it and being sucked into the sides of it, creating a tunnel in space and time. And you decide that in this dream you're going to go through that portal and see where it leads. And so you run and you jump through that portal. And you find yourself landing on the softest sand, on the most beautiful beach, with water gently lapping on a shore. And you see on the shore, just where the water meets the shore, that there's a bottle that seems to just be washed up and back on the shore, just bobbing onto the sand, being pulled a little way back out to sea, then being washed back onto the sand. And you pick up that bottle. You find that there's a message inside the bottle. And you take the paper out of the bottle, and it looks like it could have been written yesterday. But you notice that there's a date in the top corner that shows it was actually written hundreds of years earlier. And that it talks about a ship carrying treasures, and that the ship is in trouble. And you wonder what happened to that ship, and you see there's coordinates, and the coordinates aren't too far, and the map that's scribbled onto this note shows that it isn't too far, if it's correct, to get to where that ship last was. You don't know what happened, whether anything would be where that ship was at the point of the bottle being thrown overboard. But you decide to explore anyway. And you see that there's a rowboat up on the beach. You take that rowboat down to the water. You row out to sea, over the waves by the shore. And then you look down into that clear water, and you can see what looks like a wreck down there. And it doesn't look too far down, that it had hit rocks near enough to the shore, and that at the time it hit those rocks, perhaps they didn't realise how close to the shore they were. There's obviously no lighthouses around here. And so you decide to dive down. The water's really calm, so you decide to dive down, taking a deep breath, being in a deeply relaxed state. And exploring and seeing if you can find what's down there. And you dive down and notice how, once you're underwater, sound changes, softens, deepens. Time seems to slow right down as you swim down deeper and deeper. And you see a chest on the sea floor, just inside the wreck of the boat. And it's only a small chest, but you decide to grab hold of that chest, push off the bottom, and swim up to the surface. You place that chest in your rowboat. You then go round to the back of the rowboat, pulling yourself up and over the back of the rowboat. As the rowboat gently turns in the water and bobs up and down, and you row back towards the shore. And back at the shore, you open that chest, curious what'll be in there. And as you open that chest, you find a crystal, and you hold that crystal, and you're sure you can feel energy coming from the crystal. And this whole experience feels surprisingly lucid. And you feel that this crystal somehow has meaning. And you close that chest, keeping hold of the crystal. And as you do, so you start to hear sounds of robins and sounds of other birds. And you find yourself awakening in that cabin. And you find that there are bird sounds that you're familiar with, even though you're in an unfamiliar place, and you don't know where those sounds are coming from. It's almost like it was a natural alarm clock, just telling you it was time to come back from that dream. And you notice that that crystal is sitting beside you on the side table next to the bed. And you start trying to think whether that crystal was always there, and that's why you dreamt it, or whether somehow you took that crystal out of your dream. And you pick the crystal up and you decide to take that with you. As you explore this area, you know you have to watch out for the polar bears. So you keep an eye out for them. You look around before leaving the cabin. And you head into the woods, head into the trees. And you see an unusual sight. You see a squirrel climbing the trees, jumping from one tree to another, and with each landing, a puff of snow falls from the tree. And you see that squirrel in a tree, and see it bashing a nut or some kind of object, and then eating what it's just broken into. And you notice that it seems to be using tools, and you admire how intelligent the squirrels seem to be. And you wonder what other animals around here that you can't see. And you can't stop here to drift into a meditation to find out. So you just continue to explore. And while you explore, you notice footprints in the snow. And you realize they look like human footprints. So you decide to follow those footprints, see who else is here. And you follow those footprints through the trees, coming out near some cliffs. And you keep following those footprints. And then you find a cave and you see there's a fire lit in the cave. And you notice someone sat cross-legged by that fire. And they're just chanting to themselves with their eyes closed, so focused on just chanting, almost seemingly unaware of your arrival. And you sit down cross-legged the other side of the fire, waiting for them to be aware of you. And you have this sense that they are aware of you, but what they're doing is more important to them than acknowledging your presence. And you find something about their chanting almost hypnotic, almost seeming to draw you in, especially with the flickering of the fire between you, and that sound of the wind just outside the cave, the way that wind seems to whistle slightly as it blows past the cave. And eventually that person opens their eyes, and they say that you found a crystal on a beach, and that crystal belongs here, and you'll know where when you go there. And you felt this was a little cryptic, and you asked for more information, and they just repeated the same thing. You found a crystal here. And they tell you the same information that still makes little sense. And eventually, when you've asked 3 or 4 times, they tell you to go and explore the cave. And as they tell you to explore the cave, you hear the dripping of the water off of the icicles hanging in the cave entrance. And they draw your attention more so to that dripping. And they tell you to grab some water first. And they offer you a pot and tell you to stand under an icicle until the pot is full. And so you stand under that icicle, holding that pot. And it seems to take so long to fill that pot with water. And you want to just put the pot down, let it fill itself. But they tell you, no, you need to stand there and have the patience to fill that pot. And then they go back to meditating and chanting by the fire. And as they meditate and chant by the fire, so you gaze at that water, filling that pot. And eventually that pot fills to the top with water. And they tell you that that water you've just gathered is directly from nature. It's cycled around, and it'll continue cycling around long after you've been and gone. But that is a healing elixir, and it'll help you to heal yourself on many levels, spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and that'll help you with your entire journey. And they encourage you to drink, and so you drink that ice-cold water. You can feel that water as it passes into your mouth, down your throat, and down through your body. And then you can feel it almost turning to a warmth as the healing begins to spread around your body, down to the tips of your toes, out to your fingertips, up to your cheeks, your head, round through your face and neck, through your chest, your stomach, through the whole of your body. And you feel that healing passing through you and filling you up. And then they tell you you're ready now to head into the cave. And you walk into the cave. And as you walk into that cave, so you notice this cave is full of crystals, that the tiniest bit of light reflects around the walls, making everything sparkle wherever you look. And that right in the middle of this cave is a space for your crystal. And you walk over, you place that crystal into that space. And as soon as you do, it's almost like it turns on a projector here. Almost like a holographic projector projecting 3D images that surround you. You notice children having a snowball fight. You see happy people running on a beach, hearing the sound of waves lapping on the shore. People having fun, people walking dogs, people in a park playing. you seem to see many memories and thoughts and ideas from people through time and space. And that person had said that you'll learn from this experience here. And you watch, then begin to feel a sense of positive emotion as you connect with the learning, as that starts taking hold within you, learning what different images, different movies playing out around you mean, how they relate to being. And you feel that that's somehow connecting deep within you, and then growing and welling from within you to fill your body like the healing elixir. And then almost as quickly as it had appeared, the room went dark, the cave went dark, and you knew that deep inside you that wisdom is planted, like planting a seed in a garden, and then watering that seed, giving that seed some nutrients, and then just looking after that seed and nurturing that seed, and giving it space and time to grow and heal and become what it becomes. And as you leave that cave, that person near the entrance says you've learned what you came here to learn, even if you don't realize it just yet. And you head back out into the snow, and you don't yet know how you're going to find your way back to the lighthouse. And when you get back to the cave, you find that just around the side of the cave is a slight glowing, humming sound, and you realise there's a portal round the side of the cave, and you enter that portal. And you find yourself on a small island, and you can see a storm disappearing off into the distance, silent lightning striking in the clouds, way off in the distance, and you can see on the horizon a light from a lighthouse sweeping across the ocean. You then see a long shadow of someone standing in front of the light, and you realize that that was you when you were up in that lighthouse, and that you're now in the location of that distant light or flash you saw when you stood up there in that lighthouse. And you notice that as that storm continues to pass and move further away, so the ocean continues to calm. And you see a rowboat on this little island. And there's a message in a bottle resting on this beach. You open the bottle, you take that message out, and it just says row. And so you put that message back in the bottle and back on the beach. You push that rowboat down to the shore and just into the water You climb into the rowboat, push off the shore with the oars, and you begin to row towards that lighthouse in the distance. And you bob up and down over the water near the shore. And then the waves get larger, but smoother as you move a bit further out. And you head towards that beacon in the distance. And after some time, you reach that shoreline. You pull up that boat at the foot of the cliffs. You climb up the cliffs following a path. And up on top of the cliff, you see that wise person from the cave sitting on a bench. You walk over and sit on the bench next to them. They tell you you found what you came here for, and you'll learn that, and you'll discover that. And then they stand up from beside you, and they walk off. Then you stand up and you head home. And at home, you feel like you've had such a long day. You feel like you've had such a strange experience. You feel that it's a lot to process. And so you head to bed, wrap up warm. You settle down, and you drift and float, comfortably relaxed, soundly asleep.